National treasure and Australia's richest woman, Gina Rinehart, has backed nuclear energy, advocating that the nation include this as part of their plan for zero emissions by tomorrow. Are you listening, Labor? This should be included, she says, with the plans for wind and solar. Most notably, only one of the three are capable of baseload power, you know, the stuff nations run on. And here she is putting to bed any fears that people might still have related to Chernobyl or Fukushima fears, saying, ha, we're in the 21st century now. It's really, really harmless.
If a man stood next to that same nuclear power plant for a year and then went home to share a bed with two wives, he'd get more radiation from sharing that bed than standing next to the nuclear power plant all year.
You gotta love it. What a way to make a point. I love the randomness. But here she is seriously saying, can we not, with the clearing all the land for these jolly wind turbines, etc. and so on, can we just pursue nuclear energy?
Let's not upset many farmers with bird-killing wind generators and massive solar panel stretches, and bring on clean, safe nuclear energy. Please, Australia.
Preach, Gina, preach. But of course, Labor has their ears closed. Here was Bill Shorten this morning saying nuclear is the stuff of unicorns.
Why don't you have an independent inquiry into unicorns? I mean, just because someone wants to have an independent inquiry doesn't mean you have one.
Oh,
and since the fairies at the bottom of the garden, why don't we have an inquiry into flying into the sun at night time?
If you want to talk about unicorns, mate, look at Labor's plan for our energy. I mean, it's going from bad to worse as we speak. Meanwhile, we literally have the world's largest deposits of uranium, which means we have a third of the world's deposits of uranium. 20% of the Earth's energy is generated by nuclear energy, and we are the one G20 country in the world who's not only not using it, we have a moratorium on these things. And while they keep telling us, oh, renewables are so cheap and the cost of nuclear would be too much, the upfront costs, we're putting out massive upfront costs building infrastructure for this renewable energy, which isn't capable of baseload energy anyway.
It's so depressing to live in this country right now. You've got successful business people saying we need to have a discussion about nuclear power, while the government is saying, no, let's not talk about that. What about a public holiday? That would be good. and the Labor Party, I mean, when you talk to them about nuclear energy, they literally stand there saying, too dangerous, too expensive, too dangerous, too expensive.
Ridiculous.
Bill Shorten is disgraceful there, where he's just mocking one of our most successful business people. You've got a failed Labor leader treating Gina Rinehart as if she's a know-nothing. And the reason they're doing this, Caleb, is because if we get nuclear power, then we don't need solar or wind. And Chris Bowen has spent a mozza of taxpayer money on all this stuff that will become redundant. No wonder Labor don't want to know about it.
Well, I've learned two things tonight. One is that when I go home, I've got to sack one of my two wives because I'm getting radiation poisoning. Not sure which one I'm going to sack yet. Sorry. Thanks, Gina. And the other is that nuclear energy is the same as unicorns. Right. Now, nuclear energy actually exists, funnily enough. I've argued all along that all of these discussions we get caught up in about whether or not it's economically viable, that's not even the point. The argument we need to engage in is whether or not we lift the moratorium on nuclear energy. Now, if all these people on the left and in the Labor Party, Bill Shorten, who says it's all unicorns and rainbows, if they believe that nuclear energy is not economically viable, then you've got nothing to lose in lifting the moratorium because no one will build a single nuclear, I was going to say waste dump. We can't even have them at the moment either. Last week, the federal government cancelled one of them. We won't have a single nuclear power plant in this country because there'll be no one willing to punt up the money to do it because they won't make any money out of it. The reason they don't want to lift the moratorium or have an inquiry into it is because they know they are telling lies. Otherwise, they would have nothing to worry about. And Shorten was also saying this morning that one of the biggest problems with all of this is they haven't told us where they're going to build a nuclear power plant. We don't have any details. We don't have any costings. Reminds me a bit of the Voice to Parliament, don't you think? We don't actually know what it's going to look like. We don't know how many people are going to be on it. We've just been told, well, let's just agree to the general idea of a voice and we'll sort out the rest later. But when we say, well, why don't we just sort of agree on the general idea of nuclear power and then we'll work out how we might do it? No, we
can't even have an inquiry because that's like having an inquiry into unicorns.
Yeah.
Please.
So we can't even look into it that far, for crying out loud.